Hey, it's Brian from Wagshal's. We're going to talk today a little bit about how to pick a steak and how to grill a steak. Well, let's start off with how we prepare all of our beef. We carry different cuts, whether it's a local grown grass-fed animal or a rare Piedmontese prime Italian breed. We more so focus on the prime Black Angus beef. You know, we break down all of our sides of beef into primal cuts and then dry age them for a minimum of 28 days. Now that's dry aging. A lot different from wet aging. Wet aging is cryovac bags where these cuts are sitting in its own blood, making it really red, but in a sense it's rotting the meat, breaking down the proteins in a way that you don't want. When you dry age a piece of beef, it takes the moisture out, leaving the essence, the flavor of the steak you're about to have. So in a sense, if you're getting a dry aged piece of beef, you don't necessarily need to throw a lot of seasoning on it, especially if it's prime. We also have steaks that we dry age even longer. Those tend to get a little bit darker. They're not as traditional looking as most are used to, but again, the moisture is taken out, leaving a lot of the essence of the flavor of the steak itself. Now, you have a couple different kinds of cuts that we can talk about. We're going to talk about mainly about 4 different types. You have your tenderloin, which is basically your softest, most tender piece of meat. It doesn't have a lot of flavor. The interior marbling is very scarce. It has a buttery richness, but you know, me personally, I don't like the tenderloin. You also have your loin cut, now, or New York strip as most people are used to calling it. That has a lot of flavor. It's not going to be as tender, but again, the marbling is very concentrated throughout the whole loin, leaving a lot of flavor. You also have your sirloin. It doesn't have as much of the flavor as the loin does. We usually suggest feeding these or using these for parties. But you know, it's a very popular cut, but you know, not as flavorful as your loin. You also have your ribeye, or your bone-in or boneless ribeye, or Delmonico, if you will. That has a tremendous amount of flavor. You know, it is kind of like the best of both worlds. It has a lot of tenderness and is full of flavor. You know, your porterhouse and your T-bones, all that is basically your loin cut with the tenderloin on the other side. It does have the bone in it, so it will make it a little bit more flavorful. But we don't suggest usually taking these and putting them on the grill because you have 2 different kinds of cuts and they cook differently. So, you know, oftentimes people will take a porterhouse, put it on the grill, and overcook it. Well, that's not necessarily because they left it on too long. It's just, again, because 2 different cuts require different attention. Good rule of thumb is always leave your steaks out for about an hour and a half, 2 hours before you cook it. The meat will sweat, pores will open, and the seasoning will stick on the steak a lot better. Your grill surface should be nice and hot. Barely hold your hand up there, you know it's ready. You should start the steak out at a 45-degree angle. After 3 minutes, I'm going to turn it another 45 degrees and another 3 minutes. This will give you that cross grill marks that you see in restaurants. You're cooking like a chef now. Alright, after 3 minutes, we're going to flip the steak. And again, 45 degrees, 3 minutes, and another 3 minutes. Don't worry about undercooking the steak. Worst case scenario is you could always finish it off in the oven. I always like to turn my steak on the side, the fatty side that is, to finish it off. Crisp up that fat. But don't worry about the flare-ups. Fat does burn. You could always blow it out. Or as my grandfather used to use, is a water squirt bottle. Once the steak is done, you're going to let it rest. Fight the urge to cut into it. 3-5 minutes, let those juices disperse evenly throughout the meat. Then, you're ready to eat. I personally like to slice my steak before I serve it to my guests and family, nice and thin. It just gives it a little bit more of a plating effect to it. Well, now you know how to pick a good steak, and now you know how to grill a good steak. Enjoy.